So, the movie kicks off with a kid named Steve. Now, Steve wasn't your typical playground and sandcastle kind of kid. Nope, this guy was obsessed with going into mines. But since he was just a kid, the adults around him were like, yeah, no chance, buddy. Years went by, a lot of years, and finally, Steve grew up probably still dreaming about rocks and tunnels. And the first thing this grown-up mine maniac does? Heads straight for the mines to fulfill his lifelong dream of digging real inspiring. While he's down there getting dirt in every imaginable crevice, he stumbles upon an earth crystal and an orb. Curious, he slots the crystal into the orb, and boom, a portal appears out of nowhere. Naturally, Steve being Steve, jumps into the mysterious glowing hole like it's totally safe. He lands in a bizarre world where everything is square. Imagine someone's pixelated fever dream come to life. The place is called the Overworld, and get this. Anything you imagine here just happens. So for a creatively wired weirdo like Steve, this was basically paradise. He decides, yep, this is home now, and even adopts a wolf dog as his loyal sidekick. Over the years, the bond between Steve and his furry friend grows stronger than Steve's sense of fashion. Let's be real, this guy lives in a world where everything's a square. His wardrobe probably came from a Lego discount store. Steve builds all kinds of things in the overworld houses, gadgets, probably a square-shaped hot tub, and life's good. Until one day, while tinkering away, he stumbles upon another portal. Because Steve apparently never learned the phrase, maybe don't walk into strange magic holes, he walks right in again. This time, he finds himself in a bleak, depressing world called Netherland. No joy, no creativity, just doom and gloom. Basically like going from Disneyland to DMV. As soon as he lands, the evil queen of this world captures him and steals the earth crystal and orb. Turns out she'd been trying to get her evil hands on those items forever. Why? So she could destroy the overworld, because apparently they didn't accept her. Big villain energy coming from someone whose revenge plan is basically burn it all down because nobody liked me. Steve freaks out when he hears this. But then he realizes that only he can save the overworld. Cue the dramatic music. That night, Steve tricks the guards, surprisingly competent for a guy who spent his life playing with rocks and escapes. He steals the orb and earth crystal back, risking everything. He throws the items into a bag, gives them to his trusty wolf dog, and says, go to Earth, hide this in my room under the bed, because apparently dogs can now travel across dimensions and follow architectural blueprints. And the dog does just that, runs through the portal from Netherland to Overworld, then through another portal to Earth, and hides the orb under Steve's bed. That's one good boy. Years pass again, and now we meet Garrett, a down-on-his-luck guy running a failing video game store. Hardly anyone visits, bills are piling up, and he's just received an eviction notice. Honestly, Garrett's luck is so bad, if he tripped over a gold bar, it'd turn into a brick. Desperate to save his game shop, he decides to blow his last bit of money on a shipping container, thinking he can flip whatever's inside to make a profit. He checks out a container, and inside finds a game called Cosmos, a legendary title from the old days. Thinking this game is his golden ticket, he buys the whole container, hyped to relaunch it and revive his store. But of course, fate drop-kicks him again. Turns out the container is just filled with old junk, no game, just dust and disappointment. But buried in that pile of trash, he finds something odd, an orb and an earth crystal. Not knowing what they were, he picks them up. They had ended up there because they originally belonged to Steve. Hidden away years ago, Garrett, clearly cursed by the universe, heads back home with the mysterious items. And right on cue, his car breaks down. Furious, he steps out and starts yelling like a lunatic. At this point, even the car was like, I'm done with you, bro. The scene shifts and we're introduced to a boy named Henry and his sister. Henry was a smart kid, kind of like Steve from earlier, full of wild ideas and a big imagination. Whatever he dreamed of creating, he would first sketch it in his drawing book. Basically, the kid had more ideas than sense, but hey, at least he drew them first. It turns out Henry and his sister had just moved into Garrett's neighborhood. The next morning, before heading to school, Henry stopped by Garrett's gaming zone. He met Garrett, checked out the shop, and actually liked a lot of what he saw. But since he was running short on time, he left for school. As soon as he arrived, the art teacher gave the class a live drawing assignment. In front of the students were a banana and an orange, which they were supposed to sketch exactly as they appeared. Henry, however, couldn't help himself. His creativity took over, and he drew a jetpack strapped to the banana like it was ready for liftoff. Yeah, because nothing screams realistic fruit study like launching produce into orbit. Naturally, the teacher scolded him. Live drawing, she said, was about observation, not imagination. To make things worse, the other kids laughed at him on his very first day, embarrassed and fired up. Henry became determined to bring that ridiculous drawing to life. So he put in the effort, built an actual jetpack, and attached it to a skeleton model. He hauled it to the school playground for a test run. A crowd gathered, everyone curious to see this epic moment of triumph or total disaster. Spoiler, it was the latter. Some mischievous kids snipped a wire, the jetpack launched, went completely out of control, and crash-landed smack into workers at the nearby potato chip factory. Yes, he literally sent a flying skeleton to assault snack food employees. NASA hired this genius immediately. The stunt earned him a fresh round of humiliation, and the principal demanded someone from home be called, knowing his sister would roast him alive if she showed up. Henry quickly called Garrett. They'd become fast friends, and Henry made him an offer. Pretend to be my uncle, and I'll pay you $2,000. Garrett, being broke and allergic to common sense, heard money and turned into Uncle Garrett faster than you could say, bad decision. Garrett bailed him out of the school mess and took him back to his game shop. Once there, Henry inspected the jetpack and realized it was perfectly fine. He still couldn't figure out how it malfunctioned. Disheartened by the project's failure, he angrily tossed his sketchbook into the trash. As he wandered the shop, still processing the disaster, he noticed the orb and the earth crystal sitting on a shelf. Curious, he picked up the crystal and slotted it into the orb. Instantly, a powerful force surged through the room, and the orb yanked Henry straight toward the same mine from the beginning of the story, the one where Steve had found the portal to the overworld. Garrett, because of course he was snooping around, followed Henry. Meanwhile, back at home, Henry's sister was freaking out. Her brother wasn't home, and he wasn't at Garrett's either. In a panic, she called the estate agent who helped them buy their house, using the agent's phone tracking because privacy laws don't exist in this universe apparently. They all ended up at the very same mine. As the four of them stood there, baffled and probably regretting all their life choices, the orb began to react. Its power vacuum activated and sucked them all into the portal. Henry, Garrett, Henry's sister, and the estate agent lady. Yeah, even she got dragged into this interdimensional circus, probably thinking, I just sell houses. What is this? Once inside the overworld, the crew looked around in stunned silence. Everything was strange, square-shaped, and honestly straight out of a pixelated fever dream. They didn't know what to make of it. Meanwhile, back in the overworld, a local guy saw the portal to the other dimensions still open. Without asking a single question, he dove in head first. Because apparently self-preservation doesn't exist in Minecraft logic. And then we cut to the Queen of the Netherlands, who learns that the orb and earth crystal had somehow returned to the overworld, fuming with rage and vengeance. She stormed over to Steve. She told him straight up, if you bring me the orb and the crystal, I'll spare your life. Steve, upon hearing this, lit up like a Christmas tree. Because clearly Steve thought betrayal sounded like a pretty sweet deal, as long as he didn't get turned into pixel dust. Meanwhile, back in the chaos, the real estate agent was absolutely losing her mind. She was trembling with fear and practically begging everyone, let's just go back to our world right now. But before anyone could answer, bam! Nightfall hit instantly like someone just flipped a cosmic light switch, and suddenly, skeleton monsters surrounded them and began to attack. The group ran like their lives depended on it, because, well, they did. Right then, Henry had a spark of genius. He thought, if only there was a wall here, we could hide behind it and be safe. And just like magic, a wall appeared. That's when he realized, in this strange new world, whatever you think becomes reality. Inspired, he quickly imagined a whole room forming around them for protection, and they were safe. For now, shout out to Henry for discovering the power of imagination. Finally putting those wild daydreams to actual use instead of sketching jetpacks on bananas like a fruit-obsessed Elon Musk. At this point, Garrett still hadn't caught up with the rest of the group. Henry had left the orb and the earth crystal outside of the imaginary room he just created. Risking his own neck, Garrett made a break for it, trying to grab the items. But just as he picked them up, an enemy lurking in the shadows hit him with a sneak attack, an arrow right to the back. The earth crystal shattered into pieces, leaving only the orb in Garrett's hand. In a panic, Garrett ran straight toward the fort Henry had conjured, desperate to keep the orb safe. But fate had other plans. Zombie monsters now started crawling out of nowhere, all targeting Garrett like he owed them money. He scrambled up the side of the fort with the zombies hot on his heels, and now all their lives were hanging by a thread. Let's be honest. Garrett was running like he just saw his credit card statement. After promising Henry $2,000 for fake uncle duties. Just before the zombies could rip them apart, Steve burst onto the scene like a pixelated superhero and started whooping zombie butt with finesse. He'd clearly lived in this world long enough to become an expert monster slayer. With a confident smirk, Steve snapped his fingers, declaring it was morning time. Like clockwork, the sun rose, and in a satisfying blaze, all the zombies turned into toast under the sunlight. Steve then introduced himself to the group and explained he'd been living in the overworld for years. When he saw the orb in their possession, he instantly noticed the earth crystal was broken. That made him furious. Steve was so mad you'd think someone just unplugged his wife mid-game. He explained that without the earth crystal, they couldn't reopen the portal to Earth. They might be stuck in this world forever. Naturally, panic spread like wildfire among the group, but Steve calmed them down, saying there was still hope. One last earth crystal existed, hidden deep within a woodland mansion. If they wanted to return to Earth, they'd have to retrieve it. But of course, there was a catch, Steve said. I'll help you, but in return, I want the orb. Everyone agreed to the deal. Steve warned them that the woodland mansion wasn't just a stroll through the park, it was filled with danger. So before heading out, they needed weapons to defend themselves. Steve took them to his personal store, which was filled with all kinds of gear he had either crafted himself or won in battles. Among the loot, Garrett spotted a strange-looking crystal. Steve immediately warned him, "Don't touch that, it's a teleportation crystal. Wherever you throw it, that's where you'll instantly go." Naturally, Garrett, our walking cautionary tale, ignored that completely. He casually tossed it behind him and instantly teleported to the back of the room like a confused magician who doesn't know how his own trick works. Seriously, Garrett treats warnings like terms and conditions. He never reads them and then regrets everything. Now Henry was finally starting to believe what Steve had been saying all along. Steve began helping them figure out how to craft tools and gear for themselves. Henry caught on pretty quickly, so quickly in fact, that he managed to build a high-powered pressure gun that even made Steve do a double take. Steve was shocked, probably thinking, "Great, I've been here for years and this dude just built a mini cannon in 5 minutes with 2 sticks and confidence." Meanwhile, Garrett, whose brain takes every opportunity to take a nap during moments of innovation, was somehow managing to cobble together some weird, unidentifiable gadgets. Steve glanced at him, clearly confused, and asked, "What exactly are you trying to make?" Garrett shrugged and said, "Honestly, I'm not interested in building stuff. I only care about the treasure hidden in those mines where the portal to the overworld opened." Then Garrett made Steve an offer. "If you take me to that treasure, I'll give you this orb." Classic Garrett, trading magic relics like he's swapping Pokemon cards in 3rd grade. Before their conversation could go any further, monsters from the Netherlands suddenly launched an attack. Apparently, the queen of this dimension was after the earth crystal and the orb. Chaos erupted, and during the battle, Henry's sister and another girl got separated from the group. Steve grabbed Henry and Garrett and led them to higher ground. Once they got there, he handed them iron wings. Yes, actual wings that could make them fly. Then he pointed to a distant hill and explained, "The woodland mansion is just beyond that hill. That's where the last earth crystal is." To test the wings, Garrett decided to yeet Henry off the cliff without warning. At first, the wings didn't open, because obviously nothing says teamwork like giving your friend an unexpected flying lesson off a mountain. But just before Henry hit the ground, the wings finally kicked in and lifted him up into the air. Inspired, Garrett jumped too. Steve was reluctant to jump at all, but when he saw the Queen's soldiers coming up fast from behind, trying to kill him, he had no choice but to leap right onto Garrett. Let's be real. Steve clung to Garrett like a nervous chihuahua on a roller coaster. Before they could reach the hills near the mansion, the wings gave out mid-flight and they all crash-landed onto the ground. While recovering from their fall, Garrett turned to Steve and asked, "Who were those creepy soldiers that attacked us?" Steve explained that those were the soldiers of the Queen of the Netherlands. She wanted to destroy the overworld. Her motive? Years ago, her own people mocked her dancing. Yep, that's what triggered her villain arc. She got so humiliated it lit a fire inside her, literally. And ever since then, she's hated everything about the overworld, especially anyone with talent or creativity. She now wants to wipe it all out. And she's coming after us, Steve added, because she wants the orb. Garrett squinted suspiciously and asked, "Wait, you want the orb too? So why do you want it?" Steve replied, "I need the orb to save my dog. If the Queen gets the orb before me, she'll kill my dog and lock me up for life." Because, of course, this whole apocalyptic mess is now suddenly about saving one emotionally needy golden retriever. Priority Steve. Meanwhile, somewhere else, it was nighttime. Henry's sister and her friend were lost and alone. That's when a sad-looking dog wandered up to them. From his collar, they realized it was Steve's dog. They, too, wanted to find their way back to their group. Luckily, Steve's dog started sniffing out his owner's trail and began guiding them through the dark. Back with the main crew, Steve had taken Garrett to the mine, where the treasure was supposedly hidden. But just as they were getting ready to grab something, the mine's guards got wind of their arrival. Without hesitation, the guards began collapsing the mine to trap or destroy them, and now all three of their lives were hanging by a thread. Because nothing screams great plan like sneaking into a guarded mine with zero stealth and maximum overconfidence, Steve didn't waste a second. He quickly threw everyone into a minecart and sped them out of the collapsing mine. Just as they burst out, the entire mine exploded behind them, reduced to rubble. Henry turned furiously to Garrett and shouted, "Because of your greed, we nearly died in there." Garrett, now defensive and just as fired up, snapped back. "You think my life is easy? I'm broke, flat out bankrupt. I need that treasure. Doing this stuff isn't a choice for me anymore. It's survival." Steve could see Garrett's desperation and stepped in to calm things down. "Hey, I get it," he said. "I'm not doing much better myself." Eventually, the trio made it to the mysterious woodland mansion. Before they stepped inside, Steve gave them a quick rundown of what to expect. "All right," Steve began. "On the first floor, there are axe-wielding assassins who don't exactly believe in second chances. Upstairs on the second floor, magicians, not the fun kind. And the third floor's got the earth crystal, but it's guarded by Endermen. Whatever you do, do not make eye contact with them. Their eyes mess with your mind." Basically, this mansion was like the worst Airbnb ever. 0 stars would not recommend. Henry and Garrett quickly formed a plan. Garrett, in a rare burst of confidence and possibly poor judgment, volunteered to go first. He walked into the mansion and started singing, loudly to draw the assassin's attention. Because nothing throws trained killers off their game like a man belting off-key show tunes in a haunted house. Garrett's musical distraction worked. Sort of. Most of the assassins followed his voice, giving Henry the chance to sneak up to the second floor. Unfortunately, a few sharp-eyed ones spotted him going up, but Henry sprinted like his life depended on it, because it actually did and made it all the way to the third floor, avoiding any further encounters. Downstairs, Steve and Garrett stayed behind to hold off more enemies, keeping the pressure off Henry so he could finish the mission. Up on the third floor, Henry managed to get his hands on the earth crystal. But just then, an Enderman appeared behind him. Out of reflex, Henry looked it straight in the eyes. Immediately, everything around him began to blur, and hallucinations flooded his mind. He saw people he knew calling him a failure, a loser. So basically, the Enderman turned into his inner critic, on steroids. But Henry, despite the mental chaos, dug deep and pulled himself together. He grabbed his axe and took the Enderman down. When it collapsed, it dropped a glowing crystal. This one had the power to teleport. He snatched it up and ran downstairs, reuniting with Steve and Garrett. They left the woodland mansion together, mission seemingly complete. But of course, nothing ever goes smoothly. Just as they were leaving, the Queen of the Netherlands showed up with her army. In a flash, she snatched both the Earth crystal and the orb from them. And before anyone could react, she detonated a massive bomb to keep them from following. The explosion sent Garrett flying. Henry and Steve were knocked out cold. When they finally came to, Steve's dog was standing over them. Somehow the loyal pup had found them and led them back home. Good thing the dog had more survival skills than half the group combined. But Garrett was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, it was revealed that the Queen had placed the orb and Earth crystal onto her portal. As soon as they were activated, a massive laser shot out from the Netherlands, spreading dark energy into the overworld. The shadows had begun to creep in. Now, the Queen of the Netherlands wasn't satisfied with wrecking her own realm. Nope, she set her sights on total domination of the overworld too. Seeing everything falling apart, Steve grew heartbroken. But instead of sulking, he decided to take action. He rallied his friends and started planning for an all-out war. With weapons crafted and spirits high, the group stormed the battlefield. Their mini-bombs and handmade weapons were surprisingly effective. They started taking down the Queen's Netherlands soldiers one by one. Watching her forces crumble, the Queen lost it and summoned one of her biggest, baddest monsters to fight them. Because when in doubt, throw a kaiju-sized tantrum. After the team took care of the monster, Steve stepped up to challenge the Queen himself. Meanwhile, Henry remembered something important. If he could remove the Earth crystal from the portal, all the destruction would come to a halt. So he got clever. He loaded the teleportation crystal into his pressure gun and launched it near the Earth crystal, instantly teleporting himself there. But just as he was about to grab it, one of the Queen's Netherlands goons tossed a bomb at him. It exploded nearby and knocked him down. Just before he could hit the ground and become a Henry pancake, boom! Garrett appeared out of nowhere in a flying balloon and scooped him up midair. Because apparently Garrett's new side hustle is playing Uber pilot in an inflatable blimp. Turns out Garrett wasn't dead after all. That balloon had saved his life earlier. Now reunited, Henry and Garrett flew straight to the Netherlands portal wall and blasted it apart. The moment the portal collapsed, the stream of darkness pouring into the overworld stopped, light returned to the land, and sunlight spread across the skies once more. As the rays touched the Netherlands soldiers, they turned into zombies, which honestly feels like an upgrade for some of them. The Queen lost all her powers, but even stripped of her magic, she still made one last attempt to kill Steve. Unsuccessfully, of course. She really had delusional villain energy until the very end. With that, the battle was finally over. Steve's team had won. Getting ready to head back to Earth, Steve gave his beloved dog to the others as a gift. He chose to stay behind in the overworld to enjoy its peaceful new life. But then Henry's sister asked him, "Why don't you share your magic with the real world?" That simple question changed everything. Steve reconsidered, and eventually returned with the rest of them to Earth. Back home, things took a turn for the better. They opened a new gaming zone for Steve, and Henry and Garrett co-launched a brand new game, which quickly went viral. Even Garrett's problems vanished. Financial struggles all gone. Steve became his business partner and regularly performed live shows in Garrett's store. Imagine walking into a video game shop and getting a concert from the overworld's most dramatic war hero, iconic. Meanwhile, Henry strutted into school wearing his jetpack, earning instant admiration from every kid on campus. Because nothing says cool like casually floating into homeroom like Iron Man's little cousin. And with that, the movie comes to a close. With friendship, redemption, a thriving gaming startup, and a jetpack mic drop,